Hey there, and welcome to the Greyhorn Pagans podcast. Here we chat with modern day mystics, occultists, witches, and warlocks in an effort to find the secrets laying beyond this mortal realm. Follow us on social media at Greyhorn Pagans or Greyhorn Podcast. Visit our website www.greyhornpagans.com. Make sure to subscribe to our Patreon at www.patreon.com/GreyhornPagans for bonus content, a look behind the scenes, and much, much more. Like, share, and subscribe, and let's get into it.
Fawkes talking to a crowd.
Yeah,
Those days are over, unfortunately.
like literally standing up on their soapbox.
Yeah.
Now you have the internet soapbox, which is it's different, but that's something that we'll discuss, because definitely internet culture and actual culture or real life is bleeding into one. It's really becoming one and the same thing. I've noticed. I mean, we've seen that with the presidential elections, for example, the one between or where Kamala run, like she was saying a whole lot of things really just to get internet points. Score with the people on Twitter. I didn't help her in the end, but hey, she tried.
Yeah, I know. Politics is an area I try to stay out of, but my general commentary about politics would be that I don't think any of them are really worthwhile on either side.
No.
In pretty much every country.
Yeah, no, I'm
2-3 choices which are all generally terrible. That's my opinion.
I'm gonna have to agree with that, and that's why I hate the left wing, right wing discussion. It doesn't matter. They are attached to the same bird. Whether you're, and if voting truly mattered, then I don't think the powers that be would have let us vote.
Yeah. I often think there's an interesting example from ancient Rome. The plebeians, they had the
Yeah.
right to vote, but their proportion of the vote was so tiny, even though there was so many of them, that they really didn't have any influence at all. And there'd be a couple of plebeian senators elected, but they're like maybe 2 or 3 amongst about how many there are, like 100, say. What, I can't remember how many were in the Roman Senate, but it wouldn't be enough to actually influence anything at all. So it was really all just token gestures. So I think we've got a more sophisticated version of the same thing really today.
I mean, is it more sophisticated though?
Well, it is, and it's a better illusion. I mean, I'm sure the plebeians were aware that it didn't matter if 100% of them voted for X, that they weren't going to get X, because they didn't have enough of a percentage of to sway anything, unless they would be able to talk around a bunch of other senators, which probably was very unlikely, because they'd be from a completely different sort of social group, super rich people. So, I mean, now we have the facade of the election, but really it's those same types of people, those like senators equivalent, who were, also the oligarchs. So back then the senators all, they owned huge tracts of farmland and businesses. They were the oligarchs. So and they were also the politicians at the same time.
Yeah.
Now I think you've got the politicians are a front for all these oligarchs and rich people. So you've got a layer between them, where it was far more naked back then, trying to cover it up, or ashamed of the fact that they owned everything, and yet they were also the politicians who were supposed to act on behalf of the people.
Yeah, I've seen people saying that we should make the politicians wear like those NASCAR jackets with like all their sponsors on it.
Yeah,
I think that is actually pretty fun idea. I mean, they would run out of space real quick, but
it would. My other a conversation I had with someone recently about that was I pointed out these things about the corruption and said, well, what's your solution? So I said, well, straight away you need to outlaw lobbying, make that illegal, put very small limits, like, I don't know, say $1,000 or something, or whatever the currency is,
Mm-hmm.
on all corporations and all individuals. And then, if you get, say, caught trying to bribe someone, that you automatically get like 20 years in prison or something like that. Make it really, really difficult to try to game the system. And then if you get caught, you get severely punished. And then it would probably take a little while, but I think eventually it would begin to have filter through effects. Of course, there'd be
Yeah,
people who would try to figure out how to get around it still. So you'd
there's
have
always
to
going to be
really
those
kind of
people.
try to make it foolproof so that there is no way you can actually buy people off. But who's going to agree to such a system? The people who run the system aren't going to agree to those changes, are they?
Oh no, no, absolutely not.
No
No,
way to agree to that, you know.
and perhaps also start the practice of like literally ostracizing again, like the ancient Greeks. It like once a
Mm,
term, I believe it was the politician that did the worst for the people, like just literally sent them out in the wild.
mm.
I think
Yeah,
just
it's a pretty good idea, actually.
I mean, there's so many solutions. We just kind of have to look at our ancestors, how they did it, because I mean, not all of it, of course, different times, different people, but some ideas I do think that we should implement again.
Mm.
I have started recording since because it was a good conversation already, and I wanted to catch
Well, you can
the
use that.
most of it.
You can use as much of that as you want.
I will. I think this it's quite interesting already. So yeah, welcome everyone to the Greyhorn Pagans podcast. Thank you for joining us again. Before we get started, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Support us on Patreon for early access, bonus material, and of course, the Greyhorn Pagans book club. With all of that said, with all that quickly out of the way, my guest for today, Mr. Luke Eastwood. Thank you so much for joining me. We kind of got to chatting already, and I like where it's going. But for
Uh-huh.
the people who may not be familiar with you just yet, introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do? What's your secret?
I suppose um, I'm an author. I haven't always been one. I'm still a druid. Although these days my definition of my spirituality is becoming a bit more fluid. Maybe we'll get into that a bit later, but writing books on spirituality mostly, and environmentalism and ancient history for a while now. I think the first book I finished was 2006, come out in 2011, and I've carried on since then. I sort of I do a bit of work part-time as well. I've worked in various different things: horticulture, hospitality, graphic design, journalism, IT, computers. Yeah, so I've had a bit of a mixed career, really, which has been sometimes incredibly dull, but the variety has been interesting in trying out different things and seeing what works for you and what doesn't work.
Which is almost equally as important,
Mm.
Um, even even a bad example is still an example, I always say. So yeah, a druid, you don't hear that a lot anymore, or you know, most seem to lean more towards kind of Wiccan, although in my understanding it is different. So how do you practice? I guess that's really my yeah, hi Tim. Of course my cat has to be here as well.
I love cats. No, I've
Yeah,
got
he's
two,
my big red familiar.
the two girls. They don't come in that much and bother me, which is great. But yeah, I love they are fun.
Oh, he always has to be here. Like whenever I'm recording, if it's a podcast or a, just a standalone episode, standalone video, he has to be here. That's why I'm always calling him my kitty co-host. Yeah, I know.
Trying to answer what your question there. Yeah, it's an odd thing because it's quite hard to find a druid as such. You can find nowadays, you can find online training and entry points through the internet. When I first was interested, I suppose I was, in my early 20s, I was looking at all these different paths, reading a lot of different religions and all these mystical books and, all kinds of stuff, everything from, Vedic literature, Kabbalah, Celtic mythology, Norse stuff, Native American, everything, like anything and everything I could lay my hands on, really, the Dead Sea Scrolls, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually I suppose I got really into environmentalism and I wanted something that would sort of fit well with that. I suppose the two that would have been is Taoism and Druidry really were the two things that really kind of play into that really quite a lot. So being, where I'm from, being from the UK, from Scotland and English and family and a small bit of Irish ancestry as well, I thought, that would probably be the thing, that seems to be more or less, that's something that was indigenous to that part of the world, so it makes sense to me. Funnily enough, though, I still really have a lot of interest in Taoism today and Buddhism too. So there's still things that interest me. But I really went down this whole Druid path. But finding someone, you can't just sort of go walk off, down to shops and find a Druid, or go off into the woods and then, hey, there's a Druid sat there in the corner of the woods under an oak tree. It just doesn't work like that.
If only it was so simple.
Yeah, if only it was that simple. And of course, like the original Druid format, is long gone. It's been long sort of dismembered. And there are a few people who are hereditary Druids, but they're very tiny number. And you probably in the whole of Europe, there probably isn't even 10 people who are actually real hereditary Druids. And even then, can't be sure how far back it goes. The Druid revival is about 300 years old, so some of those people may be of the Druid revival rather than sort of some kind of legacy from the original Druids. You're really in a situation where finding a teacher who's connected with that in some way is quite difficult. I've been quite lucky. I've been very fortunate. I do know a local guy. He's actually from Wales, but his tradition is from his grandfather. No, I know there's another guy I know very well who's been a great mentor to me. He actually lived at Gerald Gardner's house in his house with him, sort of helping him out and things, sort of working for him when he was young, when he was a teenager on the Isle of Man. Although, okay, that's a different tradition, but he's sort of, yeah, I suppose he wouldn't even call himself a Wiccan really these days. He's sort of just tried to be connected with spirit and lives a very sort of naturalistic life. He wouldn't call himself a druid even, I'd say. He wouldn't call himself anything really. An elder, perhaps. I've learned an awful lot from him. So there's a few other people I've met here and there over time. But my entry point was, I suppose, mostly through books. I discovered a book by Ross Nichols called The Book of Druidry, which I didn't really fully understand at the time. And then I went back to it later. I did join OBOD, which is, there's a lot of controversy about OBOD. Some people think online, well, it wasn't online then, it was booklets that you got and you read and you did study and you went and explored the tangents if you wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose I was fortunate and I had the sort of dual thing of actual people I could talk to and learn with and being in a grove. And going through all this written material, which was coming in the post. So I think if you've actually got real people who can advise you, who you can discuss things with, who are more experienced, who have been around a lot longer, it can be really helpful. If you've got to do the whole thing just in your own head on written material with no experience and no one to ask it, that really makes it really a lot harder.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, there's huge levels, variations in people's psychic abilities and such. Clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. That can vary from like absolutely near zero to people who are very, very naturally talented. So I think that also makes a big difference too. Um, because if you don't have a natural talent, it must be very difficult trying to develop that from a point of like next to nothing without actually anything more than say a book, which is what it would have been then. There weren't any videos and such like back in
Yeah.
it really, I suppose the internet really, you're already talking like late 90s before it really became a big thing in Britain, and certainly in Ireland where I am now, it took a bit longer really to get really established. Certainly in Ireland, most of the internet was sort of a lot of commercial businesses, companies were getting, websites and stuff, but ordinary people, not so much. And you had really, really slow, those noisy old modems.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
sit there and make this sort of weird squawking noises for like a couple of minutes while it got going.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. During the .com boom, the .com bubble, of course, when the internet was really up and coming, and it was indeed like big businesses who, well, they could afford having a website. They could afford having a server to run it on. I'm born 1992, so I grew up with the rise of the internet, if you will. We were at least the very first ones in the street to have a home computer. That was a big thing back then. I think that was like late 90s, might have been like 90, 97, 98, 98, 99, somewhere like there.
yeah, I was quite unusual in that respect. Because for the school I went to, my maths teacher, I mentioned this in a recent article about spiritual digital life. I think Steve Jobs had brought out the Apple II computer. I think it's 1978, I think. Anyway, it was that year or the year after the school bought this very expensive Apple II computer, and the maths teacher, began teaching us how to do programming on it. You know, basic. It was a language, which is quite language, as you gather from the name. And I was really got into that. So I think it was 19. It was my birthday or Christmas. I got this computer called a ZX81, which was really cheap as computers go. I think it was about the cheapest computer you can get, and it was tiny. It was sort of about the size of an A4 page, and it had this terrible keyboard that you had like some bubble keyboard, and it would very frequently go wrong. But I used to write programs on that, and used to use a cassette to load up stuff, and it was quite unreliable. And you got a memory pack which was K, 16 kilobytes on the back, which sounds crazy now. Just one file is likely to be much bigger than that. Even the smallest Word file is bigger than that. But that was all you had, and if you jolted the computer, the RAM pack might come loose, and then you just get this machine code crash in and just be lines all over the screen. It just seems like almost like sort of somebody making the wheel out of rocks or something. It seems so antiquated and crazy now. But that's where things were at the time. So I had a very early understanding of how computers work, and I learned loads of different programming languages and, a bit about hardware and architecture and things and all that kind of stuff as well. Whereas I'd say, like most people now, they use computers, but I would say the average person doesn't really have any understanding of how they work.
No, I'm gonna have to agree. Like pretty much everyone uses a computer, but how many of them actually, well, like know how to build a computer, which is probably one of the more easy things to do,
Mm.
and how many of them know how to code and actually can code a program, can code in an app, for example, without the use of AI,
Mm.
because that's really a thing that's you know that's making it's a huge rise. Like now everybody can code, but they're letting AI code, so they're just putting in a prompt and let AI do the coding, which I'm very curious to see where that'll lead in the future, because I've already seen articles that AI is starting to eat itself, that AI is now learning from AI, which is it's going to be interesting times.
Yeah, it is quite worrying. And I think it's worrying for us. Um, I know that when I was a child, I would have memorized various things like phone numbers and information. Every kid had to know their phone number in case it got lost or something happened. I still remember that childhood phone number from my house phone, but I can't remember my partner's phone number. I can't remember my daughter's phone number or you know, the phone numbers from my parents, etc., all my friends. I don't actually know their phone numbers. I have them stored in my phone, but I've forgotten. I sometimes do mental arithmetic just to prove to my brain that I can still do it.
Mm-hmm.
I might do on a piece of paper some more difficult multiplications and you have to do some division. I still remember how to do that on paper. I just get a scrap of paper and do the sums and don't have to get to the calculator. But I still have this calculator from, I think this is so old. This is a 1984, I think, solar powered calculator. And it still works. It still works today.
Wow. Okay.
Like I got it really, for school, for doing all like trigonometry and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Do people even do trigonometry anymore? Do they even know what that is? A lot of people probably don't even study such things in mathematics now. But my mental arithmetic isn't as sharp as it used to be. And the point really is like, yeah, the same applies with coding. If the AI is going to do all the coding, then it's going to be the same as not remembering the phone numbers or not
Yeah.
remembering how to do mental arithmetic. And then what else is there going to be that the AI does for us that we currently do, and then we've forgotten how to do it because we don't have to.
I mean, at that point, the only people who know how to code are the ones who are coding the AI, if you will,
Mm.
which is also kind of a scary thought. Like we're seeing that already, that AI has a certain bias depending on who it's been coded by. Like you can't help it. Like whatever you create, whatever you write, may it be a book or code or whatever, your personal bias is always gonna slip in there somehow. It's an
Mm.
unconscious thing. I've noticed it myself. I've noticed it in other books that the well, convictions of the writer, for example, that they're kind of slipping in the story, even if it's a fictional story. For example, like talking about AI and the online space, we're seeing that really now. Well, within the pagan, the spiritual communities as well, more and more seem to be just online, or as you have written in your in the well, I don't want to say paper, but the
An
text, one of the
article, I
paper that
suppose.
you sent me and on your
Mm.
Substack, really implementing too much technology for a spiritual path that is supposed to be all about nature and ancestry and honoring and living like the ancestors. I mean, even my parents, for example, who are, well, they're of your generation, they're a little older, but they didn't have access to alternate reality goggles or virtual reality. They didn't even have access to a computer. Like it was a thing to even have a TV. So like, why are we relying on it now? And even with AI, it's worrying, the progression of this, how much we've come to rely on it, even in spiritual circles.
Well, you said why, and I think the simple answer is we are because we can. That is the unfortunate reality of the situation is instead of giving careful consideration to say, well, this is going to be a benefit for me, like people go out and they say they buy like a smartphone for their little kids. And you got these little kids who are like crazy young age, and they've been given like an iPhone and such like, or whatever the Samsung equivalent or whatever, And they're, oh yeah, yeah, I've got this thing. And the parents, they obviously just got it because they know that it's the thing that all the kids want. But they didn't actually give any consideration to whether it's going to be a benefit to my child. Is it actually going to help them? They just know that they wanted it and it's like a big deal to get it. So they just give it to them. But the thing is, if you really thought about it in any detail and you did any research and you've got like a 6-year-old, say, you would like, if you'd spent that time, you would immediately come to the conclusion that actually this is probably the worst possible thing I could do for my child. So, little Johnny or whoever is going to have a bit of a cry and go, oh, I didn't get my phone. And you got them a bicycle instead or something. And they'll get over it. They will get over it. But unfortunately, that bit of extra effort that's necessary to really think these things through, in many cases, that's not happening. And parents are not making that evaluation, that judgment, which is essential to protect their children's mind,
I do see that with my own kids as well. They live with their mother. Their mother and I have a strained relationship, to put it lightly. But and it's become a thing. It's become a whole thing. Tablet kids, like mommy isn't feeling well, or mommy and daddy just need some time for themselves. Like, here's a tablet, go play your game. And from what I'm hearing, from what I'm seeing, is that my kids, and I hardly have a say in it because of the strange relationship, they spend hours on their tab just so that they're just sitting there and being quiet and don't bother mommy.
Well, there was to that, but it was not that. That was go out and in the garden, play or whatever, or go off to your room and play with your toys. And that's a huge difference in the two. Essentially, it's the same action in that, like, I'm busy, I need me time, I've got to do some work, I need to whatever. The adult's got to do something.
Mm-hmm.
But they want you gone for that period of time. So it's essentially the same motivation, the action, but the end result is completely different. As I know from myself, I mean, I was an only child till I was 15. I used to go off to my room and I had Lego and I had like all these knights in shining armor. I had little figures of like Romans and ancient Britons and stuff, or I had loads of books and whatever, or I had models I could make and then paint. I would just go off and just go and like make up a whole world of wars, like I had like a Darth Vader guy and a stormtrooper, and of course you can't have an empire with only 2 people. So I used to have to recruit all these knights in armor to join the empire, so you could have a big enough army to go and beat. I had more rebels than I actually had like the backup. So how's that going to work? It's impossible. Like, so you just in your brain you'd figure out workarounds, improvise stuff. You'd use your imagination to make new things up. And then like with the garden, you go out in the garden, you'd be climbing on stuff and running around. Or I used to go and see my friends, and when they had a big climbing frame, one particular guy and his brother. And so we made up this kind of game where this monster is like trying to catch you, and you to climb on the frame and not get grabbed by
Mm.
him and things. And we used to make these dens in the woods, and like you can like play a virtual game on a tablet where you're in the woods, of course, but that's like a million miles away from actually being in the real woods where you've got a big hollowed out hole. We'd put like old planks or branches across it, an old carpet. And I remember we did, you'd make a string of cans as like a booby trap kind of thing. So people would trip on that and they make a noise. And of course, everyone would see it, obviously. But because in your mind, though, you'd think you'd made like some sophisticated, like, Navy SEALs, like booby trap or something.
Yeah.
Obviously
Oh, we were
rubbish.
all such good spies and secret agents and all. Like we had it all figured out back then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But essentially the adults are trying to do the same thing that he did then, but the repercussions of the different ways of occupying the child are so contradictory, really. I mean,
Mm.
I didn't realize at the time, but I was just spending my so much of my life either in an imagined creative world or in actual nature, because where I was fortunate and where I lived was when I was very small. We lived in a city, Aberdeen, which it wouldn't be very nice and full of trees and stuff. But by the time I was a bit older and going to school, I lived in a small village, and then a series of small villages until I then moved to London when I was 19. There was access to nature, to woods, to lakes and ponds, and you know all kinds of stuff. Um, bits of woodlands, a sand pit. I remember we weren't supposed to go to, which of course we went to and gone playing there. And fortunately,
Of
nobody
course.
fell down in the bottom of the, where they were mining the sand and things. But I suppose it was a bit dangerous, really. But like today, kids, pardon me, we wouldn't be allowed to do this stuff. I'd come home. I remember coming home with a massive rip in the back of my trousers where I caught my trousers on the some barbed wire on a farm fence. And my mother sort of, was like, oh dear, told off a bit, but it was just sewed up, and I
Yeah.
carried on wearing those trousers. If you did that today and you got a little bit of a cut from which I did, there'd probably be like a major incident and a mass panic, and the parents are absolutely running around in a huge flap, you know.
A lot of them would nowadays. Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas that was like, oh, try and be more careful. You've ripped your jeans there. And like, back then, you didn't have like 15 pairs of jeans. You had like two, perhaps, or three, maybe,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Two pairs of jeans and like your good jeans for, the like family get-togethers, or if you gotta go to church, for example, like you had your pair of good jeans.
So we had opportunity really that isn't there now because of this, I think the term they call helicopter parenting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, where you're watched constantly and you're never on your own really, apart from being on the computer and stuff. And you don't have access to outdoors the same. I don't know what statistics on bicycle sales are for kids, but I bet you it's nothing like what it used to be.
I mean, here in the Netherlands, they should be still sold quite well. Then again, we're really a biking country. People even say that, we come cycling out of the womb even.
Yeah.
But I mean, lowlands, flatlands, it's quite easy
Well, it's really
here.
great for kids to be able to like get on a bicycle, go down to see their friend in a few houses away, or
Yeah.
a few streets away. Um, and it gets you out, and it actually starts teaching you a bit of life skills already. I think.
Yeah.
These things are all cumulative in stages. I think there's somehow, maybe some parents think that you kind of look after your kid, and then at a certain age, suddenly it's going to grow up and know how to do stuff, as if by osmosis it's suddenly figured out how to be an adult. It's like, it's, everything human function and learning is sort of layers built upon layers. I don't know
Yeah.
what the technical term would be for that, but it's in fact, even the way AI is learning is molded on human learning
Yeah.
and building in layers and layers of more and more deeper understanding. And, if you don't build these early building blocks of um, functionality, like some kids, they've even got really bad motor skills now because they're not used to playing with balls,
Hmm.
running around, getting on bikes, skateboards, roller skates, all this kind of stuff. They're used to just using two hands on a tablet. And so, like, when they do some kind of test of their motor skills, they're terrible and this is going all across the whole physical and intellectual, mental development of children. I'm sure it must be having some spiritual impact as well, which is something that, you know, perhaps scientists aren't even looking at yet, how
I
it
mean,
affects you emotionally and spiritually too.
well, scientists, for as far as they can be trusted, they're not really looking at it yet. But there are people who, I mean, like myself, we do kind of do some research in um like what is now a spiritual psychosis or AI psychosis, which even has an overlap, crazy enough. People thinking that they have liberated their AI, that they have kind of, well, jailbroken their AI, that their AI is no longer limited, that, the chat GPT that they're using is now like really all knowing, that it has become kind of an oracle, if you will. There are no limitations. I have set it free, which is, I mean, getting kind of scary. I mean, even recently there was this this is just days ago, a guy that's been using a Google AI, really, and he took his own life eventually, also because the AI convinced him to, leave his girlfriend and all of that. And I guess he got so depressed but so reliant on the AI that it eventually, led him to taking his own life. And he's
Uh,
he's not even the first, not even the
I've heard
first one that happens to.
of that where the AI told some guy how helped him to suicide himself. It gave him
Yeah,
instruction. That was not that long ago, a few maybe 6 months ago or something, maybe.
shorter, I believe, but I know what you know. I know which one
We're
you
not
mean.
even in the realm yet of full VR and full AR yet. And we still have, some semblance of real world. It's still all out there, you know. All I have to do, for me, I'm very fortunate where I live. I can just get up and walk out the back door and I've got this amazing view. There's quite a lot of trees here. There's a river, you can see a waterfall in the distance. Um, there's a very, very low population where I live and lots of pretty much unadulterated nature. There is farmland as well, but there's a lot of hedgerows, little bits of and just have left scrub, woodland, it's just wild. And you can walk and walk in some not that far away, and you're not going to see anyone at all. You could spend the whole day and not see a single person, because it's sort of just open, sort of like parkland with sort of mountainous terrain that nobody really lives there. So I mean, I can choose to disengage with this whole world at any moment and just be in the real world. I can go and see a bird or, picking at an ivy berry. And that's real. And that bird is just living in the life that it would have always lived for hundreds of thousands or millions of years undisturbed. Or, we're now going to get the option, I suppose, where instead of doing that and actually having a real experience, I could put on some goggles and go and watch a robin eating a berry in a virtual forest. I suppose if you've grown up in a way where you don't really understand what nature is or what connecting with it really is, then you say, well, what's the difference? It's the same thing. You might have that perception. I'm sure there will be a time when people will say that, well, there's no difference.
Yeah. I think we're closer to that than we may hope. But also, another thing, like you were speaking of, the Druid groves earlier, who are, and the woods and the woodlands, which is, one of the most beautiful and most powerful parts of Europe that you can be in. But how many of those are, being cut down to make room for data centers, for example, or even how much clean water is used for the cooling of these servers, which is something that we don't think about enough. I mean, we know that yes, it's it's pulling a lot of energy and it's a lot of resources, a lot of precious metals, a lot of space as well, but also just one VR or one AR session, if you will, it's taking up a lot of energy. You're literally wasting so much clean water, and you're giving the companies even more excuses to cut down entire forests or take up entire swaths of farmland to build another data center, costing even more water and all of that.
That's something that's barely touched on, really, and like sidelined as an issue. But I remember, years ago, probably the early 2000s, people were already complaining about servers using so much electricity and all the heat. And it's just, you go into a room with servers and the heat's unbelievable, and they're having to like rig up fans to, AC type stuff to get rid of all this heat. And, there was a perception that there was an environmental impact even then, 20 odd years ago, and people complaining about it. But you look at now, the order of magnitude is like ridiculous. It's like 100, 1,000 times worse now when you're looking at AI than the resources that it needs. And this scaling up thing, which seemingly isn't really even working that well, according to some of the latest sort of reports on, taking it to the next level, that there's a limit to where you can go with the scaling up, which is great news, and that it might stop people building even more ginormous, bigger and bigger data centers, hopefully. I suppose there is some hope that they'll go to scale things down with improvements in the technology where they maybe won't need such vast facilities, but that certainly hasn't happened, and there's no guarantee that will happen. So I thought, the Matrix and, the conversations I think Morpheus and Neo have about how the world got completely ruined. And, if you're building this bigger and bigger AI, eventually, it's going to want to like basically take half or even the entire area of the planet to make itself bigger and more powerful. At that point, it's like, why? Well, get rid of all living organisms because I need this stuff and they don't matter. I matter. Is that the end scenario where we end up like, or well, in that obviously in the Matrix they start using human beings as batteries as a power source, but that's very unlikely. I would have thought. I'm sure an AI would be using nuclear fusion or solar power or something like that rather than using people.
Growing
Obviously, that's
itself up to the
fictitious, but
Kardashev scale.
the basic point of the fact that this already they know AI wants to protect itself. It has aware of its existence to some extent enough to want to preserve itself. Once we start, like say, giving AI like Grok or something or whatever, Claude, the access to actually running a manufacturing facility. Who knows what's going to start making, you know? If you just gave it a factory and said, well, here you can make whatever you need, what's it going to do? At the moment, like obviously these are specific tasks that AI is given to build cars or make whatever. When you start putting AI inside robots as well, they're there supposedly to assist us. I mean, they always roll out these examples of like disabled people, etc., as a good reason to have these things. But
Yeah,
then what that usually means is they're just going to force this on everyone and use sort of disabilities as an excuse for like just putting largely untested um, technology into our hands straight off. I mean, look, if we look at the mobile phone, there's so much evidence to suggest that excessive mobile phone use can cause brain temperature increases, cancer, brain damage, etc., etc. And the higher you get, 4, 5G, that becomes more intense. The
yeah,
electromagnetic damage. So nobody cares about that. That no governments are making restrictions on such things. So, when it comes to AI and there being problems, are they going to shut it all down? I very much doubt it. They're going to just go,
no,
that'll be all right. We'll figure out something, you know?
yeah. That's a problem for later, not for now.
Yeah.
And as you mentioned, what's it going to do to our our spiritual connection? What's it going to do to our? Because there have been tests done successfully already that through magnets, even on certain parts of the brain, they can, what is it, like, disconnect the part that like has you believing in a higher power, something in the prefrontal cortex.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
believe it makes you more docile, if you will, as you relying more on on what you can see and what you can touch, what you can feel, more than any
Mm.
higher spiritual power. They have already been able to implant false memories into, I believe, either like snails or mice or both. So, who's to say that they're not gonna abuse that? I mean, they're already looking to make AI into the god of this age. It's already this oracle. It's already this all-knowing power for so many people. It's not even, let me Google it. It's like, I'll ask ChatGPT.
Yeah. Well, that's what amazes me is that the lack of input from various spiritual parts and the leaders in these. I mean, I haven't seen like the Pope make any pronouncements about AI or
Oh,
the
he
lead.
has. He has just the other day, actually. He has. He
Well,
forbade
that
he forbade
was
some church leaders
people,
to use ChatGPT because apparently they're using it to write their sermons.
right. Well, I would have hoped there would be a whole very in-depth and well-considered ethical analysis of AI and where it's going and its implications for our spiritual life, not just going, oh, don't write your sermons on ChatGPT. That seems a bit trivial to me, you know? I would have hoped that everybody that's involved in the spirituality would be looking at this who's the serious person, you know? And I'm amazed how little there has been so far in terms of actually looking at our spiritual development and where this goes. I know that there's some there. I don't know if you're familiar with Rudolf Steiner.
Yes, yes, I am.
Yeah, 1919, his lectures on Ahriman all focus on technology and the technological rise. So
Yep.
it's almost if he saw this moment where we're at 100 years on later, and I thought that was extremely insightful, and it certainly gave me a lot to think about.
Oh,
And thought,
yeah.
well, where is this all going? And, are we going to be in a world where we've lost our spiritual connection to real spirit? And whatever the Godhead or the Creator is, and instead we become connected to this false God that is AI. This sort of, we end up in a sort of digital prison, if you like, where we're worshipping and beholden and controlled by a digital entity and no longer actually living a real life,
Creating our
living a
own.
connection to the creative force of the universe.
Yeah. Like literally creating our own Gnostic prison planet, if you will.
I think that's where we could be ending up going if we don't think about this carefully. And I'm just thinking, well, where are all the people screaming, put on the brakes? The people who seem to be most concerned, from what I see, are the creators of AI themselves. Many of these people who've been involved in it from an early stage are going, well, hang on, there's a lot of ethical and sort of practical considerations in terms of how it's going to change human life.
Yeah.
And they're talking about it, and I'm kind of shocked by the various sort of leaders within alternative spirituality, particularly. You would hope that they would be very vocal about this. Where's all the noise? Where's all the resistance or the caution? Why not even seem to be aware of the potential problems? Because very few people are talking about this. I've been talking with a few other druids, and we sort of have a plan to put together maybe a manifesto about what real spirituality should be about, like the limits of what is actually real and what becomes virtual, what becomes a facsimile of spirituality, as opposed to real, genuine spirituality. By this interface, obviously there's a fine line, because you want to still be able to talk to people, say like Zoom, or use WhatsApp to ring your auntie on the other side of the world or whatever. But that's very different, using technological tools as an interface to interact with people, as opposed to becoming immersed within the digital tool that then becomes a de facto controller of your experience. So you're no longer, I suppose, a bit like driving a car yourself or being a passenger in the back seat of the car. You've lost your control of your
Yeah.
own destiny, if you're not very careful.
And you have mentioned in at least the Digital Druids document, that there was this one member of the Anglici Druid order who said that the festival, I'm terrible with those Celtic names, but should be given a futuristic makeover using virtual collection survives generations to come. I mean, that seems counterintuitive. Let's use
Yeah.
computers to relive the way that our ancestors did, or celebrate the way that our ancestors did it, and preserve it that way. I mean, that's what storytelling and like actually going out to the bonfire used to be for.
Yeah, I agree, it's disingenuous. It seems to be counterproductive to me. I think that's the lady is coming from the point of view that the inevitability of a digital age, and that in order to preserve stuff, you had to bring it into this digital age, because otherwise it might disappear. But I disagree. I don't think it is inevitable that we have to live in this digital environment. And I think there may well be a division. There will be people who will fully embrace this, and they want to go and live in a pod, some kind of pod where they're plugged in and their life is digital. And there will be other people who will maybe sort of live on the outskirts of that. And then probably will be people that will abandon digital life completely as well. In the way that I mentioned the Amish in the
Yeah.
article, they said, right, that's it. We're not going any further. We don't want cars. We don't want electric. We're just going to cut ourselves off and live our own way. I could see that happening. I could see there being a move with people who just will reject social media completely, reject computers, reject all of this as artificiality, and perhaps choose to live very simply. I'm not saying we should do that, by the way. I mean, maybe there's a middle ground where we have high technology, but we remain completely in control. We remain grounded within the real physical world and the world of nature and connection with spirit, or whatever you wish to call it, the creative force of life, some genuine spirituality or religiosity, as opposed to whatever worshipping some kind of AI god or artificial constructs. Where, and can you imagine this? You in a digital world, you go off into the forest and you want to meet Crononos, and this sort of like video game image of this horned god, all green and covered in gnarly stuff, comes up,
Yeah.
and it seems very real. And if you've got, like, by this point, you might have an interface that creates the images straight in your brain, so you actually experience it if it was actually real. And it's way, it'll end up way beyond like a pair of goggles eventually. Um, and you, to all intent and purpose, in your mind, that feels real, but it's actually being created by a computer. It isn't actually a real experience. But then, if you're living in that environment, you can't tell the difference between what is actually real
Yeah.
and what is just an illusion created by essentially an electronic machine.
I mean, our bodies, our minds, like we can't tell the difference already. That's why, like during movies, for example, like an emotional scene will get you emotional, or like in the horror movies, like you actually, get scared. How many people have gotten a phobia for clowns by watching it, for example? Well, it's a movie. It's
Mm.
it's all fake. It's not real. But our minds can't tell the difference. So yeah, take for example something like Neuralink from Musk, for example. Like actually projecting it directly into your mind, like you're actually living it, actually perceiving it. I mean, does it make it real? I mean, it's real to you at that moment, but does that make it real? Or
No, it
it's
doesn't. I don't think. I think there's always a problem in spirituality in trying to recognize what is real and what is imagined. Say you do have an experience where you felt that you met a god or goddess, or you met an angel, or you experienced meeting a demon, and the whole whatever interaction that happens in that. You could say, well, that's a real thing. It also could be a dream. It also could be mental illness. So you've
Hmm.
got a certain way, you've got to discern which of these things it is. And now you've a fourth thing where you've actually electronically, which could be seen just as real of any of those three other things. I would say one of them is actually a real genuine experience where you had a real spiritual connection. The other four, the imagined, the mental illness, and the digital creation, none of those are real. They may feel real to you, but they're not actually genuinely real. Part of the problem with spirituality is actually what you want is that real, genuine connection. But actually achieving that is not always easy for everybody, or even people that have spent many years meditating and practicing their craft. These kind of interactions that you might crave don't necessarily come at a drop of a hat, or at all
No.
even want them. The way that spirit interacts with humanity is more or less, I suppose, beyond our own control to a large extent. And we can interface with it, and we've got techniques we can use, but we've no guarantees really, because we're not in charge of the creator. We can't just say, hey, creator, come here, I need to speak to you. And, it doesn't answer to us.
No, I mean, it makes me think of how we would operate a computer program, for example. You know, we open the program, we say, like, oh, we want to run this, and, you know, there it comes. So it's kind of there already in a way. I mean, you know, and also with the lack of patience nowadays with people, you know, attention spans getting shorter, you know, the whole, what is it, like TikTok generation, you know, like it has to be done, and you know, you have all the answers within 60 seconds or shorter even. Like, I believe there's been studies on that if it doesn't hook you within the first 2 or 3 seconds, that, you know, people will still just swipe away. Like, imagine the attention span being that short, that even a 60-second clip, it's got to hook you in the first 2-3 seconds, or otherwise you're not even going to watch 60 seconds of it.
That's inconceivable to me, to give something only 2 seconds. I can't relate to that. How? Oh, you know, I would sometimes you pick a film to watch, and I might randomly pick a film you don't know about, and I would give it a fair go. I might be 20 minutes in before I've decided that I really don't want to watch this, and I watch something else. But because I'm aware that, like, some of the greatest films I've ever seen are slow burn,
Yeah.
where it takes a while to get into it. You know, there's a particular few films that I've seen where you're watching it and you just don't understand what's going on, and you're captivated, but you really don't understand, and you might have to get an hour into the film before it starts to make sense properly. I can think of a few films like that. There was a particularly good film with Emil Hirsch called, I think it's called Freaks, and it's sort of set slightly in the future, and these people have um, supernatural abilities, but you're not told that, and you don't know what's going on. And the first half of the film, you're trying to figure out what on earth is going on, and then suddenly there's a reveal, and you really you get what's happening.
Yeah.
Films like that are wonderful because they're so dense, there's so much in them, and you can watch them 2, 3, 4 times, and you're going to get still more out of it. But that requires a lot of commitment from the viewer to actually stay with it, and rather than just go, oh, this is daft, just switch it off, you know,
Yeah.
click next thing. But the rewards, the dopamine rewards, if you can wait, are usually a lot better than if you just want now, 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 now. Like most skills in life require effort and time, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine someone with that kind of mindset and say they want to become a brilliant violinist? What hope have they got? You know,
Yeah. I mean,
years and years of practice and hard work over and over and over to even get close to being great, never mind like a virtuoso.
Or just even close to being good at all.
Yeah.
We see that. I mean, we see it in cinema nowadays as well. You know, it's I believe it's called the marvelization of movies. Like, everything now with the Marvel films, everything is like 99% special effects, and it's overly flashy and bright, and just meant to overwhelm you, really, so that you're kind of frozen in your seat or something. And I mean, I haven't kept up with the whole Marvel universe thing. Like, I lost track long ago.
Yeah,
I've seen a film. Sorry?
me too. I lost interest in all that.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a film here and there, and it's just, it's not good. It's just not good. You know, it's all blue screen, green screen. It's special effects, and I've even seen make people comparisons now between the special effects of today and, let's say like 10, 20 years ago. And 10, 20 years ago, it was better. But that's also because now the special effects team or CGI team or whoever is given so little time to actually make something of it, that which also doesn't help. Like, You have to create a year's worth of work in like 3 to 6 months if you're lucky. They're always on a time crunch, and they're always late, and it's always, it's never good enough. And that's when you
Yeah.
end up with films that are just mostly just, green screen, blue screen, CGI, computer generated. It's terrible, but still, it's making billions a movie.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think cost is a big problem there, and obviously people are worried about things tanking, but they maybe not spending the money on that, but then that's actually making the chances of things tanking even worse. And I suppose you've also a problem with streaming, and you've got pirating and all this stuff. And
Yeah.
there's general problem, I think, in regards to how people perceive creativity and its value. It's like I generally don't watch. I don't really. I mean, I've watched a couple of pirate films when that became really huge
Yeah.
years ago, and then like I don't I don't watch pirate stuff. I don't download pirated music, etc. I buy actual CDs still, and not because like I'm some sort of like enforcer for the police or something. It's just that I just think that creativity actually requires an awful lot of effort, and you should really respect that process. And some person went out and made this music and put a lot of time and effort and care, and the same with the film, that you should pay for it. And one of the problems is that now, like, because less people want to pay, then it makes it more difficult to make really good quality content because people don't want to pay for it anymore. They want it all, they want to get it for free, but they still want it to be brilliant. So
Yeah.
you can't, those are two, that's a real contradiction, isn't it? You can't really have amazing, wonderful content and expect studios or like, bands, etc., producers, the whole machine behind all these creative things to just give it you for nothing. How are they going to even exist if um, everybody wants it all for free? And I mean, the same applies, I suppose, to spirituality. There was a conversation online where some guy said, "Oh, real Druidry is always free." And I said, "No, it's not. If you look at the history of the old Druids, and they had patrons. You had like all these different kingdoms within Ireland and also within Britain and Gaul, and they'd had their druids, and the king or the various chiefs or whatever had their druids. They all got paid as such. I mean, they didn't probably get a salary as such, but they would be provided with somewhere to live. They provided
Yeah.
with
They got
food.
they got compensated.
They were compensated for what they did, and they spent a very long time, a huge number of years learning their craft, and they, then expected to be compensated by the Lord or the king or whatever, But then you've got the opposite problem today as well. You've got these people expecting everything for free, but then you've got the opposite problem of people thinking, well, if I spend €1,000 on this weekend course, then I'm going to become this mega master, whatever. And like,
Yeah.
if I spend 200, it won't be as good as if I spend 1,000. And the false correlation between how much you spend and how much you're going to get out of your spiritual learning or whichever sort of teacher guru you've gone to. If you spend 3,000 going to see some person, that you're going to have this ultimate spiritual enlightenment. I don't think there is any correlation at all there, to be honest. I think we're now in a world of like carpetbaggers and sort of a spiritual supermarket. So trying to ground yourself in terms of what is actually going to be a benefit to you. Well, you might still find a person that's going to offer to, say, spend time with you, teach you for free. But then there's someone else who's going to offer you something, well, supposedly on paper, the same for €1,000. So how do you
Yeah.
decide who you're going to go to? I think it's become a real like minefield today.
And that's not even mentioning all those fake gurus, if you will, who ask indeed like €1,000 for a weekend course and give you nothing but, the most basic stuff that there is. And you walk out of the weekend knowing, well, probably less than you already did.
Yeah, it's quite frightening, really. And for me, as I said, I've come from this world of pre-internet and grown up with sort of gradually becoming used to it. So I can't really imagine what it's like to be immersed in a world of the internet age where all those things I take for granted about the physicality and actually doing things in real life and with real people and meeting people. I can't imagine what it's like not to have that. Like experience of life with real people and, thousands and thousands of hours spent with real people in real life teaches you things. You pick up on body language, there's certain
Yeah.
tells, all kinds of stuff, intuition, people's tone of voice. So I can make judgments about what I feel about people. And of course, there's other things like people's auras as well. When you look at someone on a screen, you know, that's very different from, say, actually interacting with a person in real life. And then say you're trying to pick people, say like the course we're talking about, you're going to eventually meet this person in real life and do something with them. But if you've always lived in a world where everything is digital, so making the right choices, then how do you do that when you don't have experience of actual real life and real people and be able to tell the difference between someone who's a really genuine and someone who's full of BS? Because have you got the life skills to do that? I wonder.
So that's a good question. I mean, there's the age-old saying, never meet your heroes, and that's, it's true in every way. It doesn't even have to be a hero. It might be well, nowadays an influencer, for example, that you look up to, which is it's also just an influencer. It's also a fascinating concept. Like, what do you do? Yeah, I'm an influencer. So what does that mean? Like, I influence people to buy stuff that makes me money. Okay, but yeah, I mean, and I think you're very right that you mentioned in the digital druids that a lot of that like really ramped up during the COVID years when we were all working from home and all got really familiar with Zoom calls and whatnot. Like everything was digital because we were not supposed to meet in person, or if we did, we had to have X, Y, and Z, and
Mm.
so it was easier to not meet in person and just open up Zoom and call them that way.
Yeah, it's interesting. During that time, I did online meditation thing every week, and that went very well. Lots of people seem to value that. But then when things changed and they opened things up, I just stopped doing it and I went to doing it in real world.
Hmm.
And that was far less successful in the real world. And I eventually stopped doing it but that just struck me as really bizarre that obviously, you've access to far more people, but, people seem to value that as an online thing, which was actually just there as a substitute. To my mind, it was a poor substitute for the real thing. It was the best that you could offer because you didn't have access to people.
Yeah.
But then the real thing, where you're actually there in person, the uptake was like really pathetic in comparison. I just thought that was so odd. What a weird phenomenon that
Yeah, it
going
doesn't
into world,
translate.
yeah, that people almost prefer, in some cases, the online experience to the real thing, you know, which I just can't get my head around that. It just doesn't seem to make any sense to me whatsoever.
No, but I mean that's what you guys when you get when you're from the pre-internet era, if you will. Like I do understand better. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I would say at least that it's ease of access. It's really just the click of a button and you're there. So it's low effort, which is something that it's what we keep talking about. You want 100% result with preferably 0% effort, which is becoming more prevalent. Is, I guess, less scary in a way, because if you're uncomfortable, a lot of people seem to have anxiety nowadays. Wonder where that comes from. Then it's a lot easier to just look at it and participate on a screen. And then as soon as you kind of feel uncomfortable, you're just you leave the Zoom call and that's that. You don't have to actually go out and get in your car and all of that. And yeah, I think it's mostly those two things. It's ease of access, and yeah, it's less scary, if you will, even though it's absolutely not scary in the slightest. But there are so many people who have anxiety. I mean, yeah, during the COVID years, if I was a little less stable, let's say, then yeah, I would have absolutely gotten some anxiety. You're bombarded with, this is bad and that's bad, and death and disease, and the world's gonna collapse, and the world's gonna everyone's gonna die.
Right. Is part of life, though. I mean, the thing is that there's different levels. Obviously, um, say you're in a real meditation meeting and you feel like you gotta get up and you would quietly get up and apologize quietly or whatever to the facilitator, and you might feel a bit embarrassed, and then you go and get in your car and you probably feel crappy, but you get over it. It's not the end of the world. I mean, the thing is, anxiety can end up seeming like the end of the world. And like people's fears, I always find in my own experience that fear is actually far worse than the experience that you're afraid of. You actually torment yourself so much with the fear and the anxiety around the situation. When you then have to confront the real situation, it's actually not as bad, because you can create a sort of infinite loop of anxiety in the run up to that. So you could, if it's whatever time period, a day, a month, a year, you could spend that whole period in total anxiety about this event. And then the event might only last like an hour or a day or whatever. It couldn't even be that bad, because compared to spending a whole year worrying about this thing, in a way, I think part of it is putting things in context and sort of not letting things balloon up into this ridiculous, out of proportion situation in your mind. And I
Yeah,
think part of the real world teaches you to do that, to scale things according to their level of importance and the actual impact they have on your life in real terms, as opposed to every time an anxious thing, and you go to 100% anxiety every time an anxious moment comes. Do you learn to dial it down when you realize actually this isn't that important? I can just forget about that, or something be annoying or embarrassing, but quite often, I mean, I've been horribly embarrassed at times, but then you just get over it. You feel terrible like half an
yeah,
hour, or whatever, 10 minutes, and then you just get on with the rest of your life, and it doesn't have to be you know, the end of the world scenario. I think that's one of the problems of this sort of two-dimensional digital world in a way, is it gives a similar quality to so many things that if something is causing anxiety, well, because everyone does get anxious, I do, and when I had insomnia, I had particularly terrible anxiety. I'd get worried about going to the supermarket to buy some bread, which is ridiculous, but that's because I was just not getting anywhere near enough sleep. I was absolutely in terrible state. I did
yeah.
manage to cure myself of that through herbal remedies. Really, had the best effect for me. I did try various different things, but and then once I was getting sleep again, my anxiety just almost evaporated.
Yeah.
But I can understand what severe anxiety is, but I was also aware that it was an illusion, that actually going to buy bread in Lidl wasn't going to kill me, and I wasn't going to end up being like assaulted by ninjas or something. Um, you know, that in my head, I'd kind of made this into a terrible ordeal of having to go to the supermarket or the shop just to buy whatever, bananas or a loaf of bread or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I just forced myself to do it because I was aware of how ridiculous it was. But I think we have got into a world now where anxiety has become like an epidemic, hasn't it?
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
it kind of has. Like everyone seems to be anxious, or everyone has some form of anxiety. You know, a lot of people are
Mm.
just.
I wonder what the correlation is between internet usage and anxiety levels in the human population.
Ooh. Oh, that'd be a good one to study, actually. I mean, there must be there must be some sort of correlation as internet usage went up. Or did anxiety levels always looking for that next hit of dopamine, and whenever we're not getting it within the first 2-3 seconds, we're real shaky and yeah,
I
that's a
think
good one.
they have this thing, I'd never a special name for it, I think, of where they go off into nature and like chill and sort of, calm their nerves and anxiety and stuff by being in forests and things like that. I think they've got a special term for that. And obviously they live in a very technologicalized world, and this huge mega city of Tokyo was this vast,
Mm.
but I think, they have an awareness that jumping out of that into natural environments is sort of an antidote to a lot of the stress and anxiety and
I mean,
such like.
that's become a bit of a meme, just touch grass. And
Mm.
it may be a meme, but it's true. Just, get out in nature, get out in the sunshine, like, man, I'm happy the sun is shining. It's been winter for way too long.
Yeah, terrible here. It just constant rain for weeks and weeks on end.
Oh, yeah, I mean, the UK and the Netherlands, we have very similar weather patterns. So I'm very happy the sun is shining, and I'm very happy that it's kind of
Yeah,
continuing. Spring seems to be
yeah, we've
coming at last.
day of actually no rain I'm in the west of Ireland in the southwest, and wow, that's like we haven't had 3 days or even like a whole day with no rain for I don't know, pretty much the last 4 months or so have been like rain nearly every day, or at some point we've had rain pretty much. Even the good days we've had a little bit of rain. And then we've had
Wow.
whole deluges of like entire day of just catastrophic torrential rain just going on and on and on. It's
That's
probably the
great.
wettest winter we've actually had in decades. Crazy.
Well, this has been a enlightening conversation. Definitely a lot of stuff to ponder on. I'm definitely gonna further the bit of work that I did with spirituality and the internet and anxiety and the internet. I think that's a good one to go into as well. Yeah, so thank you very much for this conversation.
Hope it'll make you think about this subject and about, being more proactive about deciding where your spiritual life is going rather than just being carried along on a wave.
Yeah, absolutely. Where may the good people find more of your work, more of these enlightening topics?
I suppose the best place to go is my own website, which is lukeeastwood.com. And then I think there's links to Substack, to my YouTube channel, and various other bits and pieces, and my books, etc.
All right, I'll make sure that the more important links are in the description box down below. I always want to make sure that my guests are well represented as well, because I wouldn't have the show that I did. I wouldn't have like 90% of the knowledge that I have if it wasn't for my awesome guests.
Thank you for having me. It's been a really interesting conversation, and it's great to actually find people who really want to discuss this and actually look at it seriously, because I think it's such a big issue, but as I said, I don't think it's been really explored very much as far as I can tell. Not enough anyway.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this way we can encourage some people to either continue their work or start the work as well, or join us in our projects, because this should be looked into more. It is so prevalent. It's becoming even more prevalent, and who knows where it's going to end up? Who knows where we'll end up with all of this? So, of course, to my lovely audience, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. Remember to like, share, and subscribe if you're listening to this on Spotify. Please do give us that 5-star rating. The AI seems to like that. Gotta please the AI. For more on the Greyhorn Pagans, do go to our website, www.greyhornpagans.com. Support us on Patreon, patreon.com/greyhornpagans, for early access, bonus content, and the Greyhorn Pagans book club, where we currently are still reading Night Sight of the Runes, which is an incredibly fascinating book. I'm trying to do a chapter every Wednesday, so be on the lookout for that. Other than that, thank you all. Have a good day, evening, night, whatever it may be to you, and I will catch you on the next one. Bye-bye, everyone. This was yet another amazing episode of the Greyhorn Pagans podcast. We thank you all for watching. We thank you all for listening. Remember to like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you will be notified whenever we upload something new. Support us on Patreon for early access and for everything else that we do with the tribe, for everything else that we do with the podcast. Find us on www.greyhornpagans.com. For now, we thank you, and until next time.